Hello. Welcome to our UTS Startups Confession, where entrepreneurs that I respect confess what they actually did, what actually enabled them, what they actually got, so that other people that are watching can be helped in their own pursuit. Okay, so who here has a dog? Okay, who here likes their dog? All right, do you care about your dog being happy? Okay, then Dogg is for you. Dogg is an incredible platform that we'll describe in a second, and we'll describe why it's incredible, but please, round of applause to welcome Josh. And hello to the people at home as well. So, in 10 seconds, what is Dogg with two Gs, D-O-G-G?
D-O-G-G, that's right. Dogg is an on-demand dog walking platform. We're a mobile app for both iOS and Android that allows you to connect, book, and pay for dog walks, as well as track them live. You'll get event updates and insurance for the entire walk.
Okay, so I can see where my dog is going. I have insurance, so if my dog is lost, I can buy another one.
That's right, yeah. You can reflect.
Or be compensated appropriately.
That's right, yeah, for peace of mind. But absolutely, get live tracking throughout the walk. You'll know when your dog stops to go do its business. You can request a photo update. You can talk to the walker live, let them know you want them to go one way, avoid that neighborhood, avoid that dog on that corner. And it's all from the control of your phone.
Okay, and how do I know I can trust the people doing the dog walking?
Absolutely. So part of what makes Dogg different is we were one of the first platforms to have mandatory background checks, as well as manually approved vetting. So we basically go through every profile, make sure they're up to scratch, make sure the person knows what they're doing, and then approve them. That's sort of the foundation for trust. And then from there, obviously, you always got to meet and greet when you do a dog walk. It's important to check that the person and your dog get along. But from there, yeah, absolutely. It's got review system built in. It's a great place to get your dog walked, really.
Sorry, my head is spinning. How do you know if someone is a good dog walker? Do you check references with dogs? How do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a combination of looking at personal references, just like if you'd apply for a job, you put in references. We've also worked with dog trainers to develop a test. It's only a 10-minute test, but it asks you some of the questions that you'd be expected to know as a dog walker. It pretty quickly identifies people that aren't familiar with dogs, or people that maybe need to go back and just put a little more effort into understanding dog behavior. Especially when it comes to dealing with larger dogs, those kinds of things, being in control are super important. And I think that kind of quality control on the supply side comes across as a real value add for trust on the pet parent side.
Okay, so we'll get into the questions I should be asking.
No, that's all right.
Because I love it as a platform.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
A team of 5 that are technically very strong as a team, and you've built this impressively sticky, kind of lovely to use platform. So I think it's, when people say I have a dog walking platform, that's okay, and that's a wonderful market, but also to do it in this really sticky, kind of well-designed way that you are, where the trust is there and the experience is there, is something else entirely. So this is incredible.
Thank you.
Who were you before Dogg?
I was a uni student. I was studying full-time here at UTS with a Bachelor of Marketing and a Bachelor of Science in IT. I was working part-time at a bottle store, and on my weekends I do IT projects. Eventually that sort of snowballed into being a little more entrepreneurial or a little more business-minded, and I started a development agency for IT projects with a few friends. Those friends ended up being the people that I started Dogg with.
Okay. And the idea itself, what are your first memories of the idea?
So the first ideas were back in 2017. I've always been sort of involved with animal welfare, dog walking on the weekends, helping out at shelters. And we had adopted this beautiful older dog who was on his sort of last legs, but we got him on the notion that we'd have him for 6 months and just make it super comfortable for his time out, on his way out. And then as we sort of got him, my mother, who's super big into animal welfare, she was rehabbing this dog, and he just started to want to walk and walk and walk. And both of us sort of being full-time workers or full-time studiers, we were looking around for solutions to how we could find someone to walk this dog, but it was more on like a really flexible sort of schedule. Like, how can I find someone who can come pick up my dog in the next half an hour, take him for a walk around the neighborhood, and still feel comfortable in the entire transaction? And there really wasn't anything there. So I looked overseas and I saw there was some business models that were kind of similar that kind of worked. And I thought, well, Australia is the perfect place for something similar. We've got 4 million, at the time, 4.5 million dogs, one dog for every 5 people. You know, this sort of fur baby revolution was in the air, and it seemed like the right time to pursue it.
Okay. How much of that initial pursuit was, I'm a software developer, I like this making stuff, I need a dog walked, I'm not going to go and find one, I'll make a platform for it instead?
That was 100% it. It was the weekend goal. Like, if I sat down with one friend and we said, let's build this on the weekends, if it goes somewhere, it goes somewhere, if it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't, that's totally fine. I think it's just more time you spend looking into these ideas, and the more validation you get as you sort of scheme and plot and put them together, you start to consider it more seriously, and you start to see this vision of a roadmap or these milestones start to appear, and then you make all these wild ideas and you start to fit those in between, and it becomes this beautiful Frankenstein of a timeline, which is good.
That's the thing. Startup Muster used to have a question in it around what were the critical events in the founding of your startup, and it was something like 12 or 14% of people said a hackathon was a critical event in the starting of their startup, and this was across like thousands of startups.
Yep.
So like just working on something is a wonderful way to end up stuck with a company that ends up being quite good.
Exactly, yeah. Especially if it's something you're passionate about, like for me, dogs or animal welfare, you know, those kinds of things tie in so seamlessly, it's easy to keep going on about it.
Okay, interesting. That as well, like working on something that you enjoy working on is a great way of motivating yourself before you make money out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was that first year like after that? What was kind of filling up your time?
So the first year was a lot of just testing and playing with these ideas, talking to dog owners and talking to dog walkers, and trying to figure out what the pain points were, what you could build that would solve their problems, and you know, did it fit within what your thesis was? What you're like, you make these crazy assumptions when you start a startup. You're like, this person's going to want this, and then you actually got to go out and validate it. So it's basically just about validating those things and sort of having fun with the process. So building these prototypes over a couple of weeks, and then getting friends, family, people that you know, or even just handing it to people like, would you use this as a paper prototype? Do you reckon this is something? Those kinds of things are, they're tricky because you don't always know how to go about them, but you sort of just figure it out. You do research, you find out what some startup founder somewhere else was doing, and you say, I'll give that a go, and you go out and you try that methodology, and sometimes it really pays off.
Okay. How helpful were overseas companies in the process?
I think it was important to have those overseas companies because they validated the concept of the marketplace and the idea that dog walking, because it's a high frequency, low value transaction, was an okay way to break into like a pet service marketplace. So knowing that there were companies overseas that had done something similar, or at least entered the market similar with like a vertical marketplace, it sort of puts anyone that you're talking to about their mind at ease a bit when you come home and you're like, it's going to be great. I'm going to figure out how to solve all the dog walking problems in the world. They're like, dog walking? Why would you focus on dog walking? But
because people are making lots of money out of dog walking.
Exactly.
That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the other side of like global technologies, is like people talk about starting a company that's globally focused. And I think people forget that, okay, a global kind of internet connected world means you can see what everyone else is doing as well. And you can do wonderful things in terms of figuring out, okay, they're doing that, that's working really well, I can do that without spending $10 million experimenting before you end up at that point.
Yeah. We were really lucky because marketplaces had sort of become this thing that was being thoroughly explored. So there was lots of resources out there to sort of at least get you in the mindset of, okay, what the supply and demand, what am I focusing on here? How should I address these problems? What are the concerns? Like there was a school of thought around it that helped sort of promote the concept of going after it.
Okay. That was 2018 that you started. How was COVID?
COVID was really tough, especially in the beginning, because there was a lot of uncertainty about whether dog walking was like an essential service. People didn't know what was happening, especially if you're doing it as like a side gig, it's not your full-time employment. And then as COVID went on, it was sort of settled a bit, so we understood where we were with on lockdowns. But it was really tough because a lot of people that we had focused on as our target market for busy professionals that maybe were like looking to get that extra walk in every day, or just take a bit of the stress out of the daily routine. They were working from home now, so a lot of them were being a lot more flexible with their time, and they were happy walking their own dog. So communicating with the supply side and telling them that this is going to be how it is at the moment, but things will change over time, as well as focusing and expanding the focus of how we looked at dog and like as our product, being a complementary service to people that are at home. It sort of changed our strategy and our positioning as well a little bit.
Okay, so difficult but net good.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Those kinds of big shakeups make you do a lot of like reflection, and I think there's only good things to come in those moments of like really testing your comfort zones. So yeah.
But also, I think your funding situation was interesting in what you're able to then get away with during a pandemic and building back afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. Going from doing a pre-seed raise to essentially pivoting into bootstrapping and doing side projects and building up revenue in other aspects. It felt kind of taboo at the time because you sort of were in this environment where everyone was saying go really fast, really strong, and raise more capital, or other ones were sort of going bootstrap the whole way and don't raise capital. We're sort of sitting in the middle. But it was definitely a rewarding experience because it sort of tests, and you start looking at the way the business is operating, and you start looking at different areas, and you go, okay, what can I change here? How do we view this? Is this as essential as we thought it was? You start really reevaluating a lot of things.
Yeah, when it's mostly on your shoulders,
Yep.
I think you treat things differently rather than someone that's sitting on a pile of cash and has obviously investors to satisfy, but
Yep.
ultimately you need to satisfy yourself, and now you've got a lot more reason to do that.
Yeah.
I know your numbers today, and they're incredible. So I would be hanging on to as much of that company as I could.
Yeah.
Just paint a picture of that today. After kind of 4 years in, what is Dogg today?
So Dogg's reached this point where we've got 5 employees that are all sort of completely bought into to what we're doing. We've got this great sort of company culture and really exciting sort of outlook on the next milestones for building a pet service platform. We're sort of looking at changing and building on what we've got currently and focusing on the experience and less on the transaction, and sort of redefining how pet care is viewed as sort of just like a buy and sell, but actually more about like, what is it my dog's doing while I'm not there? When we first launched and we had this feature for live tracking, my mindset was like, it's so the dog's safe, it's so the dog's safe. And the more you use it and the more feedback you get, people were going, oh, it's lovely, I love seeing, where my dog was, like seeing the pictures and knowing it was going around the park, and that's its favorite tree to go on. This is the whole experience right here. It's really, really enjoyable.
I love that. I want it for my kids.
Yeah.
When they go to school with someone following them with a camera, but apparently it's not okay. Looking back, how has the last 4 years kind of changed you as a person?
I definitely think you become more calculated. You look at things with a mindset where you analyze it a bit more. I know when I first started Dogg, I was very like starry-eyed, sky's the limit kind of thing, and that's always going to be the case, but you become more rational about how you break down problems and you look at different things. A lot of the time you end up sort of going into this, you develop a formula, I guess. Each person's got a different formula. That's why it's great to have co-founders who've got like different perspectives. So you can bounce each other, you can play devil's advocate and you can bounce around ideas. But yeah, I think that's definitely it, just developing a routine. It's sort of changed me 4 years is a long time for me to be in a startup, so matured over that time, but yeah, definitely all that other stuff.
Would you recommend co-founding a company with friends?
That's a good question.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's
not
a good
direct answer.
It's a good one. No, absolutely I would. I think you've got to be careful about which friend. I've heard a lot of stories about people starting with friends. I'm really fortunate that I'd worked with my friends prior to the startup, and we were all really comfortable with each other, and we knew each other really well. We knew we could sit down. At one point, one of my co-founders, I was living with him and working with him. We'd spend about 22 hours of every minute just spending around each other, like doing dishes, having dinner, going to work. We'd ride into work together. And if that was going to be the point that we called it, that was going to be the point we called it. So we knew we were comfortable pretty much any moment. And finding people like that's really tough, but it's special.
Interesting. So do you think if you went into that company with people that were not friends, would they have put up with everything that you've all put up with for each other?
I don't think that's particularly the case. I think it depends on people to people. I just think with friends, you have to be careful because the lines of which you draw a business relationship or a startup relationship are blurred a bit. You sort of, obviously you're very tight-knit no matter what, but yeah, I think, I can't speak out of experience, but I think from what I've heard, it just sounds like, it's something you've got to be very convinced about doing.
Yeah, and I think it's a wonderful source for co-founders as well. I think co-founder matching is quite tricky in events because what are the chances of finding someone that you actually get along with that well? Or
exactly,
that you care about being around or you care about the same problem. It's great if you already know each other.
Yeah, it's not black and white, and there's friendships of all different levels, and probably most co-founders you end up meeting through friends or something like that. So.
Yeah. So last question, if you could look down the camera and talk to yourself from 4 years ago, what advice would you have?
I'd say develop the routine earlier. Figure out what you're doing day to day, and probably network more and explore more. I think in the first year, I was probably a bit too recluse about how I was navigating the startup space, and not that that's anything negative, but there was so much opportunity to get to know more people and some amazing founders and to learn so many amazing things that you'll figure out eventually. But yeah, the earlier the better.
Fantastic advice, and wonderful to see a bunch of startup founders around here that are doing that today.
Definitely.
I lied, that's not the last question, one more. For people at home, what can they do to help with Dogg?
If you're a pet parent, you're absolutely welcome to check out Dogg and see, if you need help with your fur baby around the house or, to get them out of the house for a quick walk, then you can trust us. Or if you're a dog lover and you can't have a dog or you want to, spend some time with them, you're welcome to sign up at Dogg as well. We're always taking applications and we're Australia-wide.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
This is a wonderful story. It's nice to see people doing well and helping a lot of animals out and their owners. It's a feel-good story, and I know it's going to feel even better with all the things I know you have coming up as well.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Josh. I forgot to say, I will say, join us every Friday at 3:30 in UTS Startups at Central, and you'll see the private Q&A that we're going into now that is too juicy for the stream, and you'll get to meet some other wonderful people while you're here as well. So I'll see you here for that. Thanks very much.